Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sleepless Campfire. Tonight, we travel into the forgotten backroads of America, places where light fades, and what remains are stories that refuse to die. Specifically, we journey along the Ohio River Valley, where the water that separates Ohio from Kentucky and West Virginia has witnessed more than its share of unexplained events. Across these hills, rivers, and empty towns are accounts drawn from witness reports, police files, and archived broadcasts. Each one verified, recorded, and retold in their own words. The Ohio River Valley stretches nearly 1,000 miles, from Pittsburgh to Cairo, Illinois. Along its banks sit forgotten industrial towns, abandoned river crossings, and rural communities where darkness brings something more than just the absence of light. Sheriffs and deputies who patrol these remote areas after midnight often encounter things that cannot be explained by conventional means. Their reports, filed in official capacity, tell of strange lights in the sky, mysterious figures appearing on desolate roads, and radio communications with sources that cannot be identified. These are not campfire tales, but documented encounters from sworn officers trained to observe and report facts. The river itself has been a witness to centuries of human activity, native settlements, frontier conflicts, industrial expansion, and now, these modern mysteries. Its waters flow silently past communities where the old ways have not entirely disappeared, where folklore still holds sway, and where the boundary between known and unknown sometimes blurs in the darkness of a rural night. What follows are 8 accounts from law enforcement officials who have worked the night shift along the Ohio River Valley. Each story is documented in official reports, corroborated by multiple witnesses where possible, and represents encounters that defy rational explanation. These are the stories that keep sheriffs checking their rearview mirrors long after their shift has ended. Now, let us begin with our first story. It was late November of 2013. Deputy Mark Harrison of Gallia County, Ohio, had been with the Sheriff's Department for 7 years, spending most of that time on the night shift. The routine had become second nature to him, and the lonely roads, the occasional domestic disturbance, the traffic stops that sometimes revealed more than they should. River Road, which ran parallel to the Ohio River, was part of his regular patrol route. On this particular night, a dense fog had rolled in from the water, reducing visibility to less than 50 feet in some areas. The fog created an eerie silence along the riverbank, dampening even the usual sounds of the night. Harrison's patrol car moved slowly through the mist, headlights cutting weakly through the thick air. The clock on his dashboard read 2:17 a.m. when he first noticed something unusual. Near the old iron bridge that connected Ohio to Kentucky, a figure stood at the edge of the road, facing the river. Harrison slowed his vehicle, assuming it might be someone in distress or perhaps a fisherman starting early. As he approached, he radioed dispatch to inform them of a possible welfare check at mile marker 27. The figure turned as Harrison's headlights illuminated it. What he saw made him instinctively reach for the door handle before stopping himself. The person appeared to be wearing an old-fashioned sheriff's uniform, one that Harrison recognized from historical photographs of the department from the 1930s. The uniform was dark and appeared wet, despite the fact that there had been no rain that night. What disturbed Harrison most was the appearance of the figure. It seemed somehow translucent, almost shimmering at the edges in his headlights. He radioed dispatch again, his voice steady despite the unease creeping up his spine. "Dispatch, I have a subject here at the old bridge, requesting backup." The response from dispatch was immediate but confused. "Deputy Harrison, we have you clear on River Road near the old bridge, but our cameras show no one else there. Are you certain?" Harrison confirmed what he was seeing, his eyes never leaving the figure. As he watched, the uniformed man turned away from the river and began walking toward Harrison's vehicle, moving with an unnatural smoothness that seemed to glide rather than walk. Harrison's training kicked in, and he called out through his car's PA system, instructing the figure to stop and identify itself. The response came not through the air, but through Harrison's police radio, though the figure's mouth never moved. He belongs to the river now. Leave him be. Harrison later reported that the voice on his radio was not that of his dispatcher, but something older, filled with static and an echo that seemed to come from underwater. Simultaneously, his vehicle's engine began to sputter and cough, though it had been functioning perfectly moments before. The figure continued its approach, and Harrison found himself unable to move, transfixed by what he was witnessing. As the figure came within 20 feet of his patrol car, Harrison noticed something that made his blood run cold. The uniform the figure wore had a name tag that read, Sheriff William Maxwell, the first sheriff of Gallia County, who had drowned in the Ohio River in 1934 while pursuing bootleggers. The incident report filed by Harrison the next morning was unusually detailed for a routine patrol log. It described the figure, the radio transmission, and the vehicle malfunction. When questioned by his superiors, Harrison maintained his story despite knowing how it sounded. What lent credibility to his account was that his patrol car required a complete fuel system replacement, with mechanics unable to explain the sudden contamination of the fuel lines. Additionally, dispatch confirmed that at no time did their cameras show anyone else at the location, and the radio transmission Harrison described did not appear in their recordings. Local historians verified that Sheriff William Maxwell had indeed drowned near that very location in November 1934 while pursuing bootleggers across the river. His body was never recovered. Several other deputies over the years had reported seeing a figure in an old-fashioned uniform near the old bridge, but none had provided such a detailed account. Harrison's report was filed as unexplained phenomenon and remains in the department's archives to this day. He never again worked River Road alone during the night shift, requesting a transfer to day duty 6 months after the incident. No trace was ever found of the figure Harrison encountered that night, though he occasionally still hears static-filled transmissions on his radio when passing the old iron bridge, even with the system turned off. 2 counties east and 3 years later, in the early hours of March 2017, Deputy Sarah Jenkins of Pike County was conducting routine surveillance on State Route 23. The highway cut through the Appalachian foothills, winding past abandoned coal mines and forgotten communities. Jenkins had been with the department for 4 years and knew these roads better than most. The night was unseasonably warm, with a light rain that made the asphalt glisten under her headlights. Around 3:45 a.m., as she passed the abandoned Waverly Mine entrance, her police radio crackled with a transmission that would change how she viewed the darkness of rural Ohio. The transmission was not on any of the standard frequencies used by law enforcement in the region. It came through as a weak signal, breaking through the white noise of the radio between calls. What made it unusual was that it seemed to be a distress call from a deputy who identified himself as Miller, Pike County, requesting backup at the old Waverly Mine. Jenkins immediately contacted dispatch, asking if Deputy Miller was on duty that night. The response came back quickly. Negative, Jenkins. Miller hasn't worked for the department in 15 years. He retired after the mining incident of '02. Jenkins pulled her vehicle to the side of the road, just past the mine entrance, and killed her engine. The rain had stopped, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. As she sat there, listening to her radio, the transmission came through again, clearer this time. They're coming up from the shafts now. Multiple subjects. I repeat, I need backup at the Waverly Mine entrance. Jenkins felt a chill despite the warmth in her car. She reached for her flashlight and stepped out, approaching the mine entrance with caution. The old steel doors were partially open, hanging crookedly on their hinges, though Jenkins knew they had been welded shut years ago after a series of cave-ins. As her flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the mine entrance, Jenkins noticed something that made her stop in her tracks. Fresh footprints led into the mine, though the rain had just stopped and there was no mud nearby to create such prints. More disturbingly, she heard movement from within the mine, the sound of rocks shifting, followed by what she described in her report as whispering in a language I couldn't identify. Jenkins called for backup, her voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. While waiting for other deputies to arrive, she kept her flashlight trained on the mine entrance, watching as shadows moved within the darkness. When backup arrived 10 minutes later, led by Sheriff Tom Reynolds himself, they found Jenkins standing by her vehicle, pale and shaken. Reynolds approached the mine entrance with 2 other deputies, weapons drawn. What they found inside would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. Approximately 50 feet into the mine shaft, they discovered evidence of recent activity: disturbed dust, strange symbols drawn on the walls in what appeared to be charcoal, and a police radio from the 1990s, its battery long dead but still warm to the touch. The investigation that followed revealed that Deputy Miller, mentioned in the radio transmission, had been the last officer to respond to a call at the Waverly Mine before it was permanently sealed in 2002. That call had come in around 3:30 a.m. on a March night, with Miller reporting strange lights and sounds coming from within the mine. When backup arrived, they found Miller standing outside the mine entrance, dazed and unable to explain what had happened. He retired shortly after, citing medical reasons, and moved out of state. Attempts to locate Miller for questioning about the 2017 incident were unsuccessful. What troubled investigators most was the radio found inside the mine. Records showed it had been assigned to Miller in 1998 and reported missing in 2002 after the incident at the mine. Forensic analysis revealed that the radio had been used recently, within the past 24 hours, though its battery was decades old and should have been incapable of holding a charge. The symbols found on the mine walls were analyzed by experts but remained unidentified, bearing similarity to no known language or writing system. Jenkins underwent a psychological evaluation following the incident and was cleared for duty. She requested and was granted a transfer to the county jail, preferring the confines of the building to the open roads at night. In her official statement, she maintained that she had heard Miller's voice on the radio that night, despite never having met the man or heard recordings of his voice. Other deputies who responded to her call for backup reported experiencing electronic interference in their vehicles while near the mine entrance, though none heard the transmissions Jenkins described. The Waverly Mine was permanently sealed with concrete following the incident, and a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire was erected around the perimeter. Yet occasionally, drivers passing by on State Route 23 still report seeing lights from within the mine and hearing faint transmissions on their radios, though no official calls have been documented since that night in March 2017. No trace was ever found of who or what was inside the mine that night, or how a 15-year-old radio could transmit a call for help across decades. Further east along the river, in Mason County, West Virginia, stands the Silver Bridge, or rather, where it once stood before its catastrophic collapse in 1967. The new bridge, built in its place, carries traffic across the Ohio River between Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio. It was here, in the early hours of October 2019, that Sheriff's Deputy Ben Carter experienced something that would connect to one of the most infamous chapters in the region's paranormal history. Carter had been with the Mason County Sheriff's Department for 12 years and had heard all the stories about the Mothman that supposedly terrorized Point Pleasant in the months leading up to the bridge collapse. He considered them local folklore, nothing more. On the night in question, he was conducting bridge security checks, a routine procedure implemented after structural concerns were raised about the new bridge's aging supports. The weather was unseasonably cold for October, with a thick fog rolling off the river that obscured the bridge's midsection. At approximately 2:30 a.m., as Carter walked the pedestrian walkway on the Ohio-bound side, he noticed what appeared to be a maintenance worker ahead, checking the bridge cables with a flashlight. Carter called out, identifying himself as law enforcement and requesting identification. The figure turned, and in the beam of Carter's own flashlight, he saw something that made him freeze. The being was at least 7 feet tall, with what appeared to be massive wings folded against its back. Its eyes, reflecting the light, glowed red in the darkness. Carter immediately radioed for backup, his voice breaking as he described what he was seeing. Dispatch's response was immediate confusion. "Carter, we have you on the bridge, but our thermal imaging shows no one else there besides you." Carter insisted on what he was seeing, backing away slowly as the figure unfolded its wings and launched itself from the bridge into the fog below. When backup arrived 5 minutes later, they found Carter sitting in his patrol car, shaken but uninjured. A search of the area revealed no footprints, no evidence of anyone having been on the bridge besides Carter, and no disturbance to the bridge cables that might have indicated maintenance work. What makes this case particularly unusual is that Carter's body camera was functioning properly that night. The footage, later reviewed by his superiors, showed Carter's reaction to something ahead of him, his flashlight beam pointing at empty space. Yet Carter's audio recording captured his description of the figure in detail, including specific observations about its size and appearance that matched historical accounts of the Mothman from the 1960s. More disturbingly, the audio picked up a sound described by audio experts as similar to a human scream and the flapping of large wings. Though Carter's microphone was directional and should not have picked up ambient sounds from such a distance. The investigation that followed included consultation with experts in both structural engineering and local folklore. Engineers found no evidence of tampering with the bridge or any signs that maintenance had been performed recently. Folklore historians noted that Carter's description matched historical accounts almost exactly, despite Carter claiming to have never studied the Mothman phenomena in detail. What troubled investigators most was that Carter's patrol car, parked at the Ohio end of the bridge, had its hood warm to the touch, as if the engine had recently been running, though Carter insisted he had walked the entire length of the bridge. Carter was placed on administrative leave pending a psychological evaluation, which he passed with no concerns noted. He returned to duty, but requested a transfer away from river patrols. In his official statement, he maintained that he had seen exactly what he described, though he acknowledged how impossible it sounded. Other deputies who responded to his call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while on the bridge that night, though none saw what Carter described. The case was officially closed as unexplained phenomenon, with a recommendation that bridge security checks be conducted in pairs during night hours. This recommendation was implemented and remains in effect today. Yet occasionally, drivers crossing the bridge late at night still report seeing large shapes in the fog and hearing strange sounds from above, though no official sightings have been documented since Carter's encounter in 2019. No trace was ever found of what Carter saw that night, though bridge maintenance crews occasionally find strange feathers near the support cables, too large to belong to any known bird native to the region. In the spring of 2020, as the world grappled with an unprecedented pandemic, something else was stirring along the Ohio River near Manchester, Ohio. Deputy Lisa Martinez of Adams County had been working extra shifts due to staffing shortages caused by illness. The night of April 15th found her patrolling the riverfront near the closed boat docks, an area usually bustling with activity, but now eerily silent due to statewide lockdowns. The river was higher than usual, with spring rains swelling its banks and flooding the lower areas of the town. At approximately 1:20 a.m., Martinez received a call from dispatch about a disturbance at the old grain elevator near the river. The caller, who remained anonymous, reported seeing lights and hearing strange noises coming from the abandoned structure. Martinez approached with caution, her patrol car's spotlight cutting through the darkness. The grain elevator, a massive concrete structure that had been decommissioned 20 years earlier, stood silhouetted against the night sky, its windows dark and empty. As Martinez exited her vehicle, she noticed something unusual: wet footprints leading from the river's edge to the grain elevator's main entrance. The prints were larger than human, with what appeared to be webbing between the toes. Following protocol, she called for backup before proceeding. While waiting, she examined the footprints more closely, noting that they seemed to press deeper into the mud than a human's would, suggesting considerable weight. The strangest detail was that the footprints appeared to be leading away from the river, not toward it, as if something had emerged from the water. When backup arrived 10 minutes later, Martinez and Deputy James Reynolds approached the grain elevator with weapons drawn. The main door, which should have been chained shut, stood slightly ajar. As they entered, their flashlights revealed evidence of recent activity: disturbed dust on the floor, strange marks on the concrete walls, and a distinctive odor that Martinez later described as like river mud, mixed with something metallic. The most disturbing discovery was a series of symbols drawn on the wall in what appeared to be river mud, arranged in a circular pattern around the center of the main floor. As the deputies explored further, they heard movement from the upper levels of the grain elevator. Following the sounds, they climbed the interior stairs to the third floor, where they found something that would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. In the center of the room, arranged in a circle, were personal items belonging to at least 6 different people: wallets, keys, cell phones, and pieces of clothing. All were wet, as if recently retrieved from the river. Most disturbingly, all belonged to individuals who had drowned in the Ohio River over the past 30 years. Their bodies never recovered. The investigation that followed revealed that the items were indeed authentic, confirmed through family members of the deceased. How they came to be in the abandoned grain elevator remained a mystery. Forensic analysis of the mud symbols revealed traces of DNA from multiple individuals, none matching anyone in the national database. The symbols themselves were analyzed by experts but remained unidentified, bearing similarity to no known language or writing system. What troubled investigators most was that the grain elevator's security system, which had been disabled for years, had somehow been activated exactly at 1:17 a.m., the time of the anonymous call to dispatch. Martinez and Reynolds both underwent psychological evaluations following the incident and were cleared for duty. Martinez requested and was granted a transfer to day duty, preferring to avoid river patrols at night. In their official statements, both deputies maintained that they had heard movement from the upper levels of the grain elevator, though neither could describe what they thought they heard. Other deputies who responded to the call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while near the grain elevator that night, though none saw what Martinez and Reynolds described. The case was officially closed as unexplained phenomenon, with a recommendation that the grain elevator be demolished. This recommendation was approved, and the structure was razed in the summer of 2020. During the demolition, workers discovered a hidden chamber in the basement, flooded with river water despite being located above the water table. Inside were more personal items belonging to individuals who had drowned in the Ohio River, their bodies never recovered. No trace was ever found of who or what had arranged the items in the grain elevator, or how they had been retrieved from the river after so many years. On the opposite side of the river, in Ashland, Kentucky, the night of August 2021 brought something unexpected for Deputy Michael Thompson, a veteran of the Boyd County Sheriff's Department with 20 years of service. Thompson had seen it all, or so he thought. The summer had been particularly hot, with the Ohio River running lower than usual, exposing banks normally covered by water. It was during one of his routine river patrols that Thompson noticed something unusual near the confluence of the Ohio and Big Sandy rivers. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Thompson's spotlight caught something glinting near the water's edge, what appeared to be a vehicle partially submerged in the mud. Pulling his patrol car to a stop, Thompson radioed dispatch to inform them of a possible recovery operation. As he approached on foot, flashlight in hand, he noticed something strange about the vehicle. It appeared to be much older than its recent exposure to the elements would suggest. The mud around it was disturbed, as if something had recently emerged from or entered the water nearby. Thompson called for backup before proceeding further, following protocol for potential crime scenes. While waiting, he examined the area more closely, noting footprints in the mud that seemed to lead away from the vehicle and toward the river. The prints were unusual long and narrow, with what appeared to be claw marks at the toes. Thompson, an experienced hunter, knew they didn't belong to any animal native to Kentucky. As he followed the prints with his flashlight, they led directly to the water's edge and disappeared into the river. When backup arrived 15 minutes later, Thompson and 2 other deputies approached the vehicle more closely. What they found would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. The vehicle, a 1950s-era sedan, had license plates that were still readable, though covered in decades of river mud. Inside, they discovered skeletal remains, still buckled into the driver's seat. What made the discovery particularly disturbing was that the vehicle's doors were locked from the inside, and the windows were intact, suggesting it had entered the water sealed. The investigation that followed revealed that the vehicle belonged to a man who had disappeared in 1957 while traveling from Ashland to Ironton, Ohio. His disappearance had been investigated at the time, but eventually gone cold, with no trace of him or his vehicle ever found. How the vehicle came to be partially exposed after more than 60 years underwater remained a mystery. What troubled investigators most was that the vehicle's engine was still filled with oil, though it should have leaked decades ago. And the fuel tank contained gasoline that, while old, was still combustible. Thompson underwent a psychological evaluation following the incident and was cleared for duty. He requested to continue river patrols, though he admitted in his official statement that the footprints he had seen had disturbed him more than the discovery of human remains. Other deputies who responded to the call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while near the vehicle that night, though none saw the footprints Thompson described. The case was officially closed as historic discovery, with a recommendation that the area be searched for other potential submerged vehicles. This recommendation was implemented, though no other vehicles were found. The skeletal remains were identified through dental records as belonging to the missing man from 1957, and the case was finally closed after more than 60 years. What remained unexplained were the footprints Thompson had seen leading to the water's edge. Casts made of the prints were analyzed by experts, but matched no known animal or human foot structure. The prints appeared to have been made recently, despite the fact that the area had been underwater for decades until the recent drought conditions. No trace was ever found of what made the footprints, or how the vehicle had remained so well preserved after more than 60 years underwater. Further downriver, in Clermont County, Ohio, the small town of New Richmond has witnessed its share of strange events over the years. The night of October 2022 would add another chapter to its local lore. Deputy Rachel Kim of the Clermont County Sheriff's Department had been with the force for 5 years, spending most of that time on night duty along the river. The fall had been unusually wet, with the Ohio River running high and fast, carrying debris from hundreds of miles upstream. At approximately 2:45 a.m., Kim was patrolling Front Street, which ran parallel to the river, when she noticed something unusual near the old river crossing. The crossing, used by ferries in the 19th century before bridges were built, had been abandoned for over 100 years. Yet Kim's spotlight revealed what appeared to be a horse-drawn carriage near the water's edge, its lights flickering in the mist. Kim radioed dispatch to inform them of what she was seeing, though she knew how it would sound. The response from dispatch was immediate confusion. "Kim, we have you on Front Street near the old crossing, but our cameras show nothing there besides your vehicle." Kim insisted on what she was seeing, pulling her patrol car to a stop and approaching with caution. As she drew closer, she could make out more details. The carriage appeared to be from the late 1800s, with a driver dressed in period clothing. What made Kim's blood run cold was that the carriage seemed to be partially transparent, almost shimmering in her headlights. Kim called for backup, her voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. While waiting, she continued to observe the scene, her flashlight beam cutting through the mist. The driver of the carriage turned toward her, and Kim could see that his face was pale and almost featureless in the dim light. The horses pulling the carriage were likewise indistinct, almost blending into the fog that rolled off the river. As Kim watched, the carriage began to move toward the river, as if intending to cross where no ferry existed. When backup arrived 10 minutes later, led by Sergeant David Miller himself, they found Kim standing by her vehicle, pale and shaken. Miller approached the riverbank with 2 other deputies, weapons drawn. What they found, or rather didn't find, would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. There were no tracks in the mud besides Kim's own, no evidence of a carriage or horses having been there recently, and no disturbance to the riverbank that might have indicated such a presence. The investigation that followed included consultation with local historians. Research revealed that a carriage matching Kim's description had indeed disappeared near that very location in the fall of 1888. The carriage, carrying a wealthy businessman and his family, had been attempting to cross the river during a storm when the ferry capsized. All aboard drowned, their bodies never recovered. The incident had been well documented in local newspapers of the time, with detailed descriptions of the carriage and its occupants. Kim underwent a psychological evaluation following the incident and was cleared for duty. She requested to continue river patrols, though she admitted in her official statement that what she had seen disturbed her more than anything she had encountered in her 5 years with the department. Other deputies who responded to her call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while near the old crossing that night, though none saw what Kim described. The case was officially closed as unexplained phenomenon, with a recommendation that historical records be consulted for other potential similar incidents. This recommendation was implemented, though no other official sightings were documented. Yet occasionally, drivers passing by Front Street late at night still report seeing strange lights near the old river crossing and hearing the sound of horses. Though no official sightings have been documented since Kim's encounter in 2022, no trace was ever found of what Kim saw that night. though local historians note that her description matches historical accounts almost exactly, despite Kim claiming to have never studied the incident of 1888 in detail. Further east, in Jefferson County, Ohio, the industrial city of Steubenville has seen better days. Once a thriving center of steel production, it now bears the scars of economic decline. The night of January 2023 brought something unexpected to this beleaguered city. Deputy Thomas Wright of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department had been with the force for 8 years, spending most of that time on night duty along the river. The winter had been particularly harsh, with the Ohio River partially frozen in places, something that hadn't happened in decades. At approximately 3:20 a.m., Wright was patrolling the riverfront near the abandoned steel mills when he noticed something unusual near the water's edge. The river, though partially frozen, still flowed in the center, creating an unusual pattern of ice and open water. Wright's spotlight caught what appeared to be a person standing on the ice near the middle of the river, where the current should have made such a thing impossible. Wright radioed dispatch to inform them of what he was seeing, though he knew how it would sound. The response from dispatch was immediate confusion. "Wright, we have you on the riverfront near the old mills, but our thermal imaging shows no one on the ice." Wright insisted on what he was seeing, pulling his patrol car to a stop and approaching with caution. As he drew closer, he could make out more details. The figure appeared to be wearing old-fashioned clothing, possibly from the early 20th century. What made Wright's blood run cold was that the figure seemed to be standing on ice that should have been too thin to support a person's weight. Wright called for backup, his voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. While waiting, he continued to observe the scene, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The figure on the ice turned toward him, and Wright could see that it appeared to be a young woman, dressed in clothing that might have been fashionable 100 years ago. As Wright watched, the figure began to walk toward the Ohio shore, moving across the ice with an unnatural ease that defied the slippery conditions. When backup arrived 15 minutes later, led by Captain Maria Rodriguez herself, they found Wright standing by his vehicle, pale and shaken. Rodriguez approached the riverbank with 2 other deputies, weapons drawn. What they found, or rather, didn't find, would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. There were no tracks in the snow or ice besides Wright's own, no evidence of anyone having been on the ice recently, and no disturbance to the riverbank that might have indicated such a presence. The investigation that followed included consultation with local historians. Research revealed that a young woman matching Wright's description had indeed fallen through the ice near that very location in the winter of 1923. The woman, the daughter of a steel mill owner, had been attempting to cross the river to meet a lover when the ice gave way. Her body was never recovered. The incident had been well documented in local newspapers of the time, with detailed descriptions of the woman and her clothing. Wright underwent a psychological evaluation following the incident and was cleared for duty. He requested to continue river patrols, though he admitted in his official statement that what he had seen disturbed him more than anything he had encountered in his 8 years with the department. Other deputies who responded to his call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while near the river that night, though none saw what Wright described. The case was officially closed as unexplained phenomenon, with a recommendation that historical records be consulted for other potential similar incidents. This recommendation was implemented, though no other official sightings were documented. Yet occasionally, drivers passing by the riverfront late at night still report seeing strange lights on the ice and hearing a woman's voice calling for help. Though no official sightings have been documented since Wright's encounter in 2023, no trace was ever found of what Wright saw that night. though local historians note that his description matches historical accounts almost exactly, despite Wright claiming to have never studied the incident of 1923 in detail. Further east, in Washington County, Ohio, the city of Marietta stands at the confluence of the Ohio and Muskingum rivers. Founded in 1788, it's the oldest city in the state, with a rich history that includes more than its share of unexplained events. The night of June 2023 would add another chapter to its local lore. Deputy Jennifer Collins of the Washington County Sheriff's Department had been with the force for 6 years, spending most of that time on night duty along the rivers. The summer had been unusually hot, with both rivers running lower than usual, exposing banks normally covered by water. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Collins was patrolling the area near the confluence of the two rivers when she noticed something unusual in the sky above the water. The night was clear, with a full moon illuminating the landscape. Yet Collins could see what appeared to be 3 lights arranged in a triangular pattern, hovering silently above the river. Collins radioed dispatch to inform them of what she was seeing, though she knew how it would sound. The response from dispatch was immediate confusion. "Collins, we have you near the river confluence, but our cameras show nothing in the sky above the water." Collins insisted on what she was seeing, pulling her patrol car to a stop and exiting the vehicle to get a better view. As she watched, the triangular formation of lights began to move slowly downriver, maintaining its perfect arrangement without any visible means of propulsion or support. Collins called for backup, her voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. While waiting, she continued to observe the phenomenon, using binoculars to get a better look. The lights appeared to be part of a larger object, though the darkness made it difficult to determine its exact shape or size. What made Collins' blood run cold was that the object moved silently, without any sound of engines or rotors, despite its apparent size. When backup arrived 12 minutes later, led by Sheriff Robert Thompson himself, they found Collins standing by her vehicle, binoculars in hand. Thompson approached the riverbank with 2 other deputies, scanning the sky with powerful spotlights. What they found, or rather, didn't find, would later be documented in one of the most unusual incident reports in the department's history. There was nothing in the sky above the river, no aircraft detected on radar, and no flight plans filed for any aircraft in the area at that time. The investigation that followed included consultation with aviation experts and military authorities. Research revealed that no known aircraft, civilian or military, matched the description of what Collins had seen. Weather balloons and satellites were ruled out as explanations, as were drones, which would have been detected by the department's equipment. What troubled investigators most was that Collins's dash camera had recorded the phenomenon, though the object appeared only as 3 points of light with no visible structure connecting them. Collins underwent a psychological evaluation following the incident and was cleared for duty. She requested to continue river patrols, though she admitted in her official statement that what she had seen disturbed her more than anything she had encountered in her 6 years with the department. Other deputies who responded to her call reported experiencing unusual electronic interference in their communications equipment while near the river that night, though none saw what Collins described. The case was officially closed as unexplained aerial phenomenon, with a recommendation that similar sightings be documented and compared with others in the region. This recommendation was implemented, though no other official sightings were documented. Yet occasionally, people living near the river still report seeing strange lights in the sky above the water. Though no official sightings have been documented since Collins's encounter in 2023, no trace was ever found of what Collins saw that night, though aviation experts note that her description matches other unexplained sightings from around the world. despite Collins claiming to have never studied such phenomena in detail. The Ohio River Valley remains vast and unknowable, its waters holding secrets that span centuries and its shores bearing witness to events that defy explanation. The 8 accounts we've explored tonight represent only a fraction of the documented encounters experienced by law enforcement officials who patrol these remote areas after midnight. Each story, verified through official reports and corroborated by multiple witnesses where possible, speaks to something beyond our current understanding of reality. What connects these disparate encounters is not just geography, but the experience of trained observers, sheriffs, and deputies whose job it is to document facts and report what they see, even when what they see defies conventional explanation. These are not individuals prone to fantasy or exaggeration, but professionals trained to observe and report accurately, even when what they observe challenges their understanding of the world. The Ohio River itself has been a constant presence throughout these accounts, a silent witness to events that span decades and sometimes centuries. Its waters flow silently past communities where the old ways have not entirely disappeared, where folklore still holds sway, and where the boundary between known and unknown sometimes blurs in the darkness of a rural night. The river has carried more than just water and debris over the years. It has carried stories, memories, and perhaps something else that occasionally makes itself known to those who patrol its banks after midnight. What these encounters suggest is that there are phenomena in our world that operate outside our current understanding of physics and reality. The figures seen by deputies Harrison and Carter, the radio transmissions heard by Jenkins, the items discovered by Martinez, the vehicle found by Thompson, the carriage witnessed by Kim, the figures seen by Wright, and the lights observed by Collins all point to something beyond our everyday experience. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a pattern of unexplained phenomena that have been documented along the Ohio River Valley for generations. The psychological impact on those who experience these phenomena cannot be overstated. Each of the deputies we've discussed tonight underwent evaluation following their encounters and was cleared for duty, yet each was changed by what they experienced. Some requested transfers away from river patrols, while others continued their duties with a new awareness of what might be lurking in the darkness beyond their patrol cars' headlights. All maintained that what they had seen was real, despite knowing how impossible it sounded. What these stories remind us is that there are still mysteries in our world that defy explanation, phenomena that operate outside our current understanding of science and nature. The Ohio River Valley, with its rich history and complex geography, seems to be a nexus for such encounters, a place where the veil between worlds occasionally grows thin, allowing glimpses of something beyond our everyday experience. The documentation of these encounters by law enforcement officials lends them a credibility that similar stories from ordinary citizens might lack. These are official reports, filed in the capacity of sworn officers, describing events that challenge their understanding of reality. The fact that such reports exist at all speaks to the integrity of those who filed them, knowing how their accounts might be received by superiors and colleagues. If you or someone you know has a true story to share about unexplained encounters with law enforcement in the Ohio River Valley or elsewhere, leave it in the comments below. Our researchers examine every account submitted, looking for patterns and connections that might help us better understand these phenomena. The Ohio River will continue to flow, carrying with it the memories and mysteries of generations. Sheriffs and deputies will continue to patrol its banks after midnight, occasionally encountering things that cannot be explained by conventional means. Some of these encounters will be documented, others will remain known only to those who experience them. All will add to the rich tapestry of unexplained phenomena that make the Ohio River Valley a place where the boundary between known and unknown sometimes blurs in the darkness of a rural night. Thank you for watching Sleepless Campfire. Until next time, stay safe out there.